The S&P 500 is sitting near all-time highs. Earnings are accelerating. Margins are at record levels. Stock buybacks are near $1 trillion annual pace, which is helping provide a structural bid to the broader market. But at the same time, you've got a very different signal coming from some legendary capital allocators. Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett are sitting nearly $400 billion in cash, and they've been a net seller for 14 straight quarters while the market has continued to grind higher. The question isn't just where prices are right now. It's what the different layers of markets are telling you about the quality of this rally. So, Ilya, there's a few things that we want to touch on here today: volumes, PTJ, Buffett, the earnings themselves. Let's start with Buffett on this trading trends, because it's the most explicit capital signal that we have right now, perhaps. These record cash levels, the persistent net selling, and a clear message that this is just not an attractive environment for deploying into equities here. I guess the question is simple. Is this one of the more disciplined allocators in history moving to cash while the market's making new highs? Is he making a mistake, or do we heed the Buffett, Greg Abel warnings that Berkshire Hathaway is doing by stacking this level of cash?
Well, I think we have to take what is a time frame that Berkshire operates on and update it and sort of try to take some insights from that thinking for a trader's mindset, because obviously these are long-term holders. They have been divesting for over a year, right? 14 consecutive quarters of net
A little over
selling.
3 years. A little over 3 years now.
This is not a relevant time frame for a 45 in, 21 out options trader. It does give you a sense of where people are starting to think about things are going for these big pockets of money invested. And we have to, at the same time, hold the idea that the stock market is biased higher, and also why it's biased higher. Because these long-term holders barely ever sell until they do. And so if you look at the current environment and you see that, for example, the rally from April's lows has been violent and strong, and equities have decoupled from other markets in this sense, where the Iran war continues to be a hurdle in bonds, in oil itself, in gold, in the dollar, and yet stocks have gone off on their own. When you see that happening with diminishing volumes, as we have, it makes you think, wait a second, are we reaching a critical mass for the kind of thinking that Buffett is displaying here, where the big chunks of money aren't chasing the rally? And how sustainable is that?
Well, you have folks like Paul Tudor Jones, who's not chasing the rally either. He had an interesting interview in recent days where he talked about the market cap to GDP ratio sitting at extreme levels that you've only seen around previous historic, we'll call them events in the market, like 1929 or 2008, or even going into 2020. So you have a KPE ratio, the Robert Shiller KPE ratio above 40, where historical analogs for forward returns around these valuations, they just look structurally weak. So on one hand, you have a meaningful capital allocator, Buffett, who builds companies from the bottom up, balance sheet up. And then you have this guy, Paul Tudor Jones, who's just a legendary trader. He'll trade any ticker under the sun. But they're approaching the market from two different ways, and you're both getting the same idea, or less pointing to the same idea right now. Expected returns in equities are compressed moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, one of the more interesting things that Paul Tudor Jones said here, and of course, the CAPE index is one thing. You've, of course, heard the same thing from one Helene Meisler that you've talked to recently, who has a very similar kind of view. But what Paul Tudor Jones points out here, sort of most interestingly, is just the level of how unprecedented we are for valuations in terms of market cap relative to GDP. 250 odd percent now, higher than the crash in 29, where we were at 65. The crash in 87, we were at 85. 2000, we were at 170. And he likens the situation to what 2000 most sort of clearly. Whereas he says, okay, look, 87 was about derivatives. 08 was about derivatives. and leverage and misallocated risk and derivatives amplifying that in a very violent kind of vicious cycle way. 2000, he calls the most predictable bear market ever, because you could see that all these people got rich on tech valuations of the time. And as soon as everybody IPO'd and the lockups ended, everybody said, well, I'm going to monetize my winnings. I'm rich now. And they sold. And there was just this cascade of relentless selling because people were trying to take money off the table, not because something went wrong, but because everything went right. Everybody made money. And he makes this connection to what we're seeing here and says, well, look, for the past several years, we've been buying back something like 2% of market cap a year. And if we look at what would happen if these incoming IPOs start to see the kind of selling out to pocket the money, to cash out,
Sure.
we would be looking at introducing about another 5% of market cap back in. So the entire math, supply versus demand of shares, especially in the big tech names, of course, would completely invert.
So let's go to the other side of the equation. The fundamental picture seems to be really strong as we're making our way through this earnings season. Earnings growth is running above 25% year over year. The beat rates for both EPS and revenues are above 80%. The margins themselves are at record highs. This is 6 consecutive quarters of double-digit earnings growth right now, Ilya. Buybacks are keeping that structural bid underneath the market. So I guess the question here that I'm facing is, how do we reconcile the expected lower returns that folks like PTJ and Buffett are warning about with the exceptionally strong earnings momentum that seems to be building quarter after quarter?
I think you have to have their level of pessimism in an environment where you're seeing this kind of relentless growth, because the markets are discounting mechanisms. We don't care about what's happening now. We care about what is already priced in. At the same time, you can't have their kind of thinking on a 45-day in, 21-day out cycle, or even the kind of macro swings that I take, which typically are about 2 weeks for a trade that doesn't work, about 4, 5, 6 weeks maybe even for a trade that works. Those are much shorter timelines than what they're talking about. And so you have to be grounded in the price action. You have to take what they're saying and go, right, I understand that people who allocate big pools of money are not running to allocate at these levels. And you're seeing that in these low volumes all through this melt up. At the same time, if you try to step in front of the melt up on a 1 to 2 to 3 week kind of an idea, you might get run over. And so you have to watch the price action. You have to be risk defined. You have to keep your sizes small. And when the market gives you a limp step, you try to take a shot and you see what happens. And if it goes wrong, so be it. But your returns could be asymmetric once the whole thing finally snaps.
I think you bring up a really interesting point. So you have these 3 views right now that aren't fully aligning. You have Buffett with his capital discipline and low expected return. PTJ is talking about the valuation extremes and the structurally lower forward returns in those type of scenarios. But earnings are signaling that the current cycle still has a bit of real momentum to it. And you bring up the point that longer-term capital allocators have a fundamentally different perspective on the market than short-term traders, for which that's our audience. The next 45 and 21 out may not be the period of time when PTJ and Buffett are vindicated for their views. So, Ilya, I think you said it right. You got to trade the trend, which I suppose is a good way to say that you've been watching Trading Trends. Follow, like, subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching Tasty Live.